Welcome back to the School of Calisthenics for part 3 of our core principles, and some might say we've saved the best till last.
In lesson 1, we looked at our ability to create tension in the chain and to be able to link that from toes to hands. Lesson 2 was all about maintaining alignment through some more dynamic positions, but what we really want to get to with the core and having a high function core is to control movement. That's one of its major jobs, is to be able to move and transfer force through the chain however we want to move. So it's not just about kind of do a rollout in one plane of movement. Let's start to look at other ways which we can challenge the core to get some more global strength development. So we really like doing core exercises whilst hanging for a couple of different reasons. The first one is whilst hanging we get to train our grip strength and the grip related to shoulder stability. That's a little bit of extra added bonus for free whilst we're focusing on this ability to hold tension through the chain. The other really good advantage of doing core whilst hanging is we get to integrate these two structures together. Healthy core gives the shoulder something strong to sit on top of, and that means the shoulder has an opportunity to function well. If we aren't strong in the midsection, the shoulder's then always going to be fighting a little bit of a losing battle. So these two things working together is a real bonus. You can see if we think about what we did in lesson 1, and Jacko hangs here, he's pretty much in a hollow body position. So he's creating tension and holding it in the chain. He's also then starting to think about, as we go through the movements, thinking about that alignment. If that back was to arch and fall out, just like it would do in a ring rollout, we've lost core control and we're not giving the shoulder a good foundation to sit on top of. So loads of benefit of putting hanging exercises into your core training.
The first of these hanging exercises we're going to do is a toes to bar. And we're going to look specifically at some of the technique of how to get it, make sure you get it right compared to doing it wrong, and then some of the key factors that you need to work on to get it right. So Tim's going to be, first of all, hanging on the bar. And we've already talked about how this hanging motion, the shoulder is having to connect in with the core. Now he's trying to link these two together, so he's got to try and pull his pelvis underneath and drive his toes towards the bar. Whilst he's doing that, what his body wants to do is it wants to really rock backwards when you're not strong enough. If you haven't got that position, we get the legs bent and then we're actually leaning back rather than actually the movement coming from the hips. One thing that might restrict that is if you're super tight through your hamstrings and around your hips, then it becomes difficult to actually create that motion, create that flexion through the spine at the bottom. So it's starting to look at why not only are we trying to link the shoulder and core together, the pelvis is part of that situation with the core. If you're tight around your hips and your hamstrings, it's going to have an effect on what the core is sat on top of, and that as part of the chain linking up to the shoulder. So we're starting now to look at the core in terms of this whole global movement for the body and be able to move and train effectively.
Remember, range of movement is a cornerstone of performance, so to have everything lined up and stacked in together, we need to have good muscle length, a good ability to move through different ranges of movement to be able to actually get everything to play nicely together. The second exercise we're going to have a look at is our hanging wipers. I like this one because it's a bit of a challenge on a number of different fronts. 1, shoulder stability, but 2, keeping the hips high. And the transfer from this exercise, it's not exactly the same, but you're going to get some oblique strength, which is going to be great for your flag, but also for things like your front lever, holding that position and starting to keep the hips nice and high. So Jack is going to jump up on the bar. He's just going to pull his hips up. So this again starts a bit like we would do this skin the cat. We'll get your feet up nice and high. We want a nice flat back position here. And then he's going to have to start to shift weight and force distribution on the hands as he pulls from side to side with his legs. He's trying to get himself as far over, and the key is to try and keep that hip high. Just drop the hip down one, Jacko. You can see if you fall to this position, we're just kind of hanging as much. We're not getting as much core stability going on. And think about what we said right back at the start about what the core is. Still working all of this musculature in the shoulders, in the back, anything which attaches into the spine and the pelvis, that's our core. This exercise is hitting the lot.
So there's 2 great core exercises to help you with controlling movement, but also you've got that hanging element to it as well. So make sure on that, when we are hanging, we're being active in that position. So we're getting some of that shoulder blade depression and retraction at the same time whilst you're training your core.
So one of the really good things to think about when you're training is, can you do the least amount of work to get the most amount of change? So by integrating some hanging work and your core training at the same time, you're starting to put more ticks in boxes. It means you have to do less exercises, and that frees up some space in your training program to get more things bubbling at the same time.
And if you want to move on to some of more of the cooler, sexy stuff like the human flags, like the levers, you need to get that shoulder and that core working effectively. So make sure you get on these as a starting point to be able to move on to some of those more impossible things.
Any questions on core training, guys, drop them below. And until next time,
Class dismissed.